I never thought examining an enemy rifle would shatter everything I believed about German weapons superiority. My name is Dieter Vogel, and in the autumn of 1943, I was a 38-year-old weapons engineer at the Waffenamt testing facility in Kummersdorf, just south of Berlin. I had spent 15 years designing and evaluating military small arms, working my way up from a junior draftsman to lead engineer in the rifle testing division. I had helped refine the Karabiner 98K, evaluated countless prototype weapons, and genuinely believed that German engineering represented the pinnacle of firearms design. We were told constantly that our weapons were superior to anything the enemy could field, that German precision and craftsmanship gave our soldiers decisive advantages. But when a captured American M1 Garand rifle arrived at our facility in September 1943, accompanied by urgent requests from frontline commanders for analysis of why their troops were being outgunned, I began a testing process that would expose uncomfortable truths our leadership didn't want to hear, and that would ultimately get me dismissed for refusing to falsify my findings. The morning of September 15, 1943, started with unusual activity at the testing range. My supervisor, Oberingenieur Karl Brenner, called an emergency meeting of the senior weapons evaluation staff. Brenner was 52 years old, a veteran of the Great War who had worked in weapons development since the 1920s. He was known for his meticulous approach to testing and his unwillingness to accept substandard designs, qualities that had earned him respect among engineers, even if they sometimes put him at odds with political appointees who valued ideology over functionality. Gentlemen, we have received multiple M1 Garand rifles captured from American forces in Italy and North Africa, Brenner announced, gesturing to several rifles laid out on the table. These have been sent to us with disturbing reports from field commanders. Our troops are reporting that American infantry can deliver significantly higher volumes of accurate fire than German infantry armed with the Kar 98K. Some commanders are claiming their soldiers are effectively outgunned in firefights, despite superior training and tactical positioning. Our task is to conduct comprehensive testing to understand the M1's capabilities and determine whether these field reports have merit. I picked up one of the M1 rifles, feeling its weight and balance. It was heavier than our Kar 98K, weighing about 4.3 kilograms compared to the Kar 98K's 3.9 kilograms. The action was different, a gas-operated semi-automatic system rather than our bolt-action design. The 8-round N-block clip loaded from the top was unusual compared to our 5-round stripper clips loaded through the action. On initial examination, it seemed well made but not extraordinary. Certainly nothing that would explain reports of German troops being outgunned. "What's the testing protocol?" I asked, already running through standard evaluation procedures in my mind. "Comprehensive," Brenner replied. "Rate of fire accuracy at various ranges, reliability under different conditions, ease of maintenance, durability testing, and most importantly, combat effectiveness comparison with the Kar 98K. The Wehrmacht wants answers, and they want them quickly. Field Marshal Kesselring himself has requested this evaluation after reports from Italy indicated American firepower superiority in infantry engagements." So over the next 3 weeks, I led a team of 6 engineers in the most thorough weapons evaluation I'd ever conducted. We started with basic function testing, ensuring we understood how the M1 operated. The gas-operated system was straightforward. Gas tapped from the barrel drove an operating rod that cycled the action, extracting the spent cartridge and chambering a fresh round automatically. The trigger simply needed to be pulled again to fire the next shot, rather than requiring the manual bolt operation of our Kar 98K. The first day of range testing revealed something that immediately caught my attention. Friedrich Weber, one of my test engineers, who was also a veteran infantry NCO recalled from retirement to work in weapons development, was conducting rate of fire tests. He'd served on the Eastern Front in 1941, before a wound sent him home, and he understood combat shooting better than most of our purely technical staff. "Dieter, you need to see this," Friedrich called out after the first test series. He had both a Kar 98K and an M1 Garand set up on adjacent stations, along with timing equipment and fired cartridge counters. "I just ran timed fire tests with both weapons using a trained shooter simulating combat conditions. The results are remarkable." He showed me his data sheet. In 60 seconds of aimed fire at man-sized targets at 100 meters, our test shooter fired 18 accurate shots with the Kar 98K. That's actually better than average field performance, by the way. With the M1 Garand, the same shooter fired 40 accurate shots in the same time period. That's more than double the rate of fire, and accuracy was comparable or slightly better with the M1. I checked his methodology carefully, looking for errors or bias in the testing. I found none. We repeated the test with different shooters, different ranges, different conditions. The results were consistent. The M1 Garand allowed a trained soldier to deliver roughly 2 to 2.5 times the volume of accurate fire compared to the Kar 98K in any given time period. Run the tests again, I said, but this time use shooters with varying skill levels. I want to know if this advantage holds for average soldiers or just expert marksmen. The follow-up tests were even more revealing. With expert marksmen, the M1's advantage was significant, but not overwhelming. Skilled shooters could work a bolt action very quickly, partially closing the gap. But with average or below average shooters, the kind of soldiers who made up the bulk of any army, the M1's advantage was devastating. A mediocre shot with an M1 could deliver accurate fire almost as quickly as an expert with a Kar 98K, and much more quickly than a mediocre shot with a bolt-action rifle. This finding had profound implications. In real combat, armies don't consist entirely of expert marksmen. Most soldiers are average shooters who perform adequately under good conditions, but struggle under stress, fatigue, and fear. The M1 Garand essentially multiplied the effectiveness of average soldiers, giving them firepower capabilities that would normally require much higher skill levels with a bolt-action rifle. This meant that American infantry units, man for man, could deliver substantially more firepower than German units, even if individual German soldiers were theoretically better trained. Hans Müller, my ballistics specialist, conducted accuracy testing at various ranges. Müller was 45 years old, a former Olympic rifle shooter, who understood precision shooting better than anyone at the facility. His findings added another dimension to the analysis. The M1 is sufficiently accurate for combat purposes at all practical infantry ranges, Müller reported after a week of testing. At 100 meters, average group size is comparable to the Kar 98K. At 300 meters, the Kar 98K has a slight accuracy advantage, perhaps 10% better group sizes. But here's what matters for combat effectiveness. Because the M1 allows much faster follow-up shots without losing position or sight picture, a shooter can deliver multiple accurate rounds on target in the time it takes a Kar 98K shooter to cycle the bolt and reacquire the target for a second shot. The practical accuracy advantage goes to the M1 because the shooter can make rapid corrections and deliver more rounds in the critical window when the target is exposed. I was beginning to understand why frontline commanders were reporting their troops being outgunned. In actual combat, where targets appeared briefly and firefights were won by whoever could deliver effective fire first and fastest, the M1 represented a fundamental shift in infantry firepower. But I needed to understand all aspects of the weapon before drawing conclusions. We conducted reliability testing under various environmental conditions. The M1 was run through mud, sand, extreme cold, and extreme heat. We deliberately neglected maintenance to see how it performed when dirty. We fired thousands of rounds through each test rifle to evaluate durability. The results were mixed, but generally favorable to the M1. The gas system was more complex than our simple bolt action, with more parts that could potentially fail. But in practice, the M1 proved remarkably reliable. It functioned well in mud and sand, conditions that could cause problems for any weapon, but didn't stop the M1 more often than they stopped the Kar 98K. In extreme cold, the M1 actually had an advantage because the gas operation required less physical effort from the shooter than manually cycling a frozen bolt. The weapon was robust and well designed for field conditions. Lieutenant Ernst Schmidt, a combat veteran temporarily assigned to our facility to provide tactical perspective on weapons testing, observed our evaluations with increasing concern. Schmidt had fought in North Africa and Italy, where he'd encountered American forces equipped with the M1 Garand. His practical combat experience added crucial context to our technical findings. Everything you're documenting here matches what we experienced in the field, Schmidt told me during a break in testing. In Sicily, my company got into a firefight with an American infantry platoon. We had better positions, we had more combat experience. Our soldiers were better trained in tactical fundamentals, but we were overwhelmed by their rate of fire. They could suppress our positions and maneuver while maintaining fire in a way that we simply couldn't match with bolt-action rifles. We lost that engagement not because we made tactical errors, but because they could shoot faster than we could. It was a fundamental disadvantage that no amount of training or tactical skill could overcome. By early October, I had compiled a comprehensive technical report documenting our findings. The data was clear and undeniable. The M1 Garand represented a significant advancement in infantry rifle design that gave American soldiers a substantial firepower advantage over German infantry armed with bolt-action rifles. The report included detailed testing data, comparative analyses, and tactical implications. I concluded with a recommendation that Germany urgently develop and field a semi-automatic rifle to maintain infantry combat effectiveness parity with American forces. I submitted the report to Oberingenieur Brenner, expecting it to be forwarded up the chain of command to the Wehrmacht and the Armaments Ministry. Instead, 3 days later, I was called into a meeting with Brenner and 2 officials from the SS Weapons Office, a parallel organization that had increasing influence over weapons procurement as the war progressed. The senior SS official, Sturmbannführer Otto Krause, was 40 years old, a political appointee with limited technical background but significant bureaucratic power. He sat behind Brenner's desk, having essentially commandeered the meeting, while Brenner stood to the side looking uncomfortable. Krause held my report in his hand, and his expression was one of barely controlled anger. "Engineer Vogel, I've read your report on the American M1 rifle," Krause said, his voice cold and precise. "Your conclusions are unacceptable and potentially damaging to military morale and the war effort. You claim that an American weapon is superior to German engineering, that our soldiers are outgunned by inferior enemies. This is defeatist propaganda, masquerading as technical analysis." I felt a surge of anger, but kept my voice level and professional. "Sturmbannführer, the report contains only objective data from rigorous testing. The M1 Garand is demonstrably superior to the Kar-98K in rate of fire, and this translates to significant tactical advantages in combat. These are facts, not opinions or propaganda. Facts can be misleading when interpreted incorrectly," Krause replied. "The Kar-98K is a proven weapon that has served Germany well for years. It's reliable, accurate, and familiar to our troops. Your report suggests we should abandon this proven design in favor of copying enemy technology. That shows a fundamental misunderstanding of German military philosophy and engineering superiority." Brenner finally spoke up, his voice careful but firm. "With respect, Sturmbannführer, Engineer Vogel's testing methodology was sound, and his findings are technically accurate. The M1 does provide significantly higher rates of fire. This has implications for infantry tactics and equipment development that we need to address." Krause turned his cold gaze to Brenner. "Oberingenieur, your facility exists to support the war effort, not to undermine confidence in German weapons. This report will not be forwarded to the Wehrmacht in its current form. Engineer Vogel will revise it to emphasize the weaknesses and limitations of the M1 design and to reaffirm the adequacy of current German infantry weapons. Is that clear?" I couldn't stay silent. "You're asking me to falsify technical findings and misrepresent test data. I won't do that. The report accurately reflects what we observed and measured. If the leadership doesn't like the conclusions, that's unfortunate. But changing the facts won't change the reality our soldiers face in combat." The room went silent. Challenging an SS officer was dangerous, but I'd spent my entire career building a reputation for honest, rigorous technical work. I wasn't going to destroy that by lying to protect egos or ideology. Krause stood up slowly, his face flushed with anger. "Engineer Vogel, you are dismissed from this project effective immediately. Your report is rejected and will not be distributed. You will return to routine testing duties and will not discuss your M1 findings with anyone. Oberingenieur Brenner, I expect you to find engineers who understand their duty to the Reich and who can provide analysis that supports rather than undermines military confidence." I was escorted from the meeting and reassigned to testing pistol ammunition, a significant demotion that made clear this was punishment for refusing to falsify my findings. My M1 Garand report was suppressed, and an alternative analysis was commissioned that emphasized perceived weaknesses in the American rifle design while downplaying its advantages. But word of the suppressed report spread through the technical community at Kummersdorf and other weapons facilities. Other engineers who'd examined captured M1 rifles knew my findings were accurate. Friedrich Weber, my test engineer, risked his own position by quietly circulating copies of the original report to contacts in the Wehrmacht, ensuring that at least some field commanders received honest technical analysis, even if official channels rejected it. In November 1943, I was called into another meeting, this time with officials from the Heereswaffenamt, the Army Weapons Agency, who'd gotten hold of my suppressed report through unofficial channels. Major Klaus Dietrich, a technical officer with extensive frontline experience, was direct and frank in a way that political appointees never were. "Engineer Vogel, I've read both your original report and the sanitized version that was officially submitted," Dietrich said. "Your original analysis matches what we're hearing from commanders in Italy and increasingly from France, where we're capturing more American weapons. Our infantry is outgunned in firefights against American forces. The question is what we do about it. We need a semi-automatic rifle," I said bluntly. "The technology isn't mysterious or impossible. We've had semi-automatic rifle prototypes for years, the Gewehr 41 and the newer Gewehr 43. The problem has been that development was never prioritized because leadership assumed bolt actions were adequate. My testing proves they're not adequate against an enemy equipped with semi-automatics." Dietrich nodded grimly. "The Gewehr 43 is entering production now, but in limited quantities. It won't be enough to re-equip our infantry on any meaningful scale. The Sturmgewehr project shows more promise with its intermediate cartridge concept, but that's even further from mass production. Meanwhile, every American soldier we face carries an M1 Garand, and we're asking our troops to fight them with rifles designed in 1898. He paused, then added, "For what it's worth, your report has been circulated to several field marshals and senior commanders despite official suppression. Some of them are pushing for accelerated semi-automatic rifle development. Your work may have more impact than you realize, even if it cost you officially." I was quietly transferred to a different testing facility in early 1944, essentially exiled from the main weapons development center for refusing to falsify my M1 analysis. But I continued to hear reports that validated everything I'd found in testing. American infantry firepower was consistently superior to German infantry firepower in engagements where both sides had comparable numbers and positions. The Garand's semi-automatic capability gave American soldiers a decisive advantage in the rapid, chaotic firefights that characterized infantry combat. The Gewehr 43 semi-automatic rifle did enter production, and the revolutionary Sturmgewehr 44 assault rifle was developed, but neither was produced in quantities sufficient to re-equip German infantry on a large scale. By the time these weapons reached the field in significant numbers, Germany was already losing the war for reasons that went far beyond small arms technology. But in countless small unit engagements, German soldiers continued to face American troops armed with M1 Garands while carrying bolt-action Kar-98K rifles, fighting with a fundamental firepower disadvantage that my suppressed report had clearly documented. The war ended in May 1945, and I found myself trying to rebuild a life in occupied Germany. The weapons facilities where I'd worked were dismantled. My career in military engineering was over, and I faced the psychological weight of having seen my honest technical work suppressed because it contradicted political narratives. I'd been right about the M1 Garand. My testing had been rigorous and accurate, but telling uncomfortable truths had been treated as disloyalty rather than professional duty. In the years after the war, as military historians and weapons analysts examined captured German documents and interviewed surviving engineers, my original M1 Garand report surfaced and was republished in various military journals. It became something of a case study in what happens when technical analysis is subordinated to political considerations, when honest findings are suppressed because they challenge preferred narratives. The report was cited in discussions of German wartime weapons development failures and in analyses of why Germany failed to maintain technological parity with Allied forces, despite significant engineering capabilities. Friedrich Weber, who'd risked his position to circulate my report, survived the war and tracked me down in 1947. We met in a cafe in Hamburg, two former military engineers trying to find our place in a shattered country. Friedrich told me that several Wehrmacht officers had credited my analysis with helping them understand and adapt to American infantry tactics, even if they couldn't change the weapons their troops carried. "You were right, Dieter," Friedrich said, his voice weary but sincere. "Everything you documented about the M1 was accurate. I saw it myself on the Eastern Front before my injury. When we faced American-supplied Soviet units with semi-automatic rifles, The difference in firefight dynamics was obvious. Rate of fire matters. You tried to tell them that, but they didn't want to hear it because it meant admitting we were behind in a critical technology. I transitioned to civilian engineering work, eventually finding employment with a manufacturing company producing agricultural equipment. It was humble work compared to weapons development, but it was honest and useful. I never returned to military engineering, partly because the opportunity didn't exist in occupied Germany, partly because I'd lost faith in systems that prioritized political considerations over technical truth. The M1 Garand continued service with the US military for decades after the war, eventually replaced by more modern designs, but remembered as one of the most effective infantry rifles ever fielded. General George Patton famously called it the greatest battle implement ever devised, and while that might have been hyperbole, my testing in 1943 had proven it was genuinely superior to the weapons Germany fielded for most of the war. That superiority, documented in my suppressed report, represented a tactical advantage that cost German soldiers in countless engagements. I'm 88 years old now, long retired, living quietly in Munich. Occasionally, military historians or weapons enthusiasts contact me, wanting to discuss my M1 Garand evaluation and the circumstances around its suppression. I always tell them the same thing. The technical findings were straightforward and undeniable. The M1 was a better infantry rifle than the Kar 98K for combat purposes. What made the situation tragic wasn't the technical gap itself, but rather the system's refusal to acknowledge that gap honestly and respond appropriately. The lesson from that experience extends beyond weapons development. It's about what happens when organizations prioritize ideology and ego over honest assessment of reality. Germany had excellent engineers and the industrial capacity to develop competitive semi-automatic rifles. What we lacked was a decision-making system willing to hear uncomfortable truths and act on them promptly. My M1 Garand report was dismissed, not because the analysis was wrong, but because the conclusions challenged preferred narratives about German military superiority. That same dynamic played out across German wartime development and strategy. Technical experts who raised concerns about sustainability, logistics, strategic overreach, or enemy capabilities were often sidelined or ignored if their findings contradicted leadership's assumptions. The result was a military that excelled tactically but failed strategically, that produced sophisticated weapons but couldn't produce them in adequate quantities, that fought with courage and skill but was ultimately defeated by enemies who made better strategic decisions based on honest assessment of capabilities and limitations. Looking back across the decades, I realized that my experience with the M1 Garand testing was a microcosm of larger institutional failures. The suppression of honest technical analysis wasn't an isolated incident, but rather symptomatic of a system that had lost the ability to receive and act on information that contradicted its preferred view of reality. This wasn't unique to weapons development. It affected intelligence analysis, strategic planning, industrial production, and nearly every aspect of the war effort. The engineers and technical specialists I worked with were generally competent and dedicated professionals. We understood our fields, we conducted rigorous testing, we generated accurate data, but that expertise was only valuable if the system receiving our findings was willing to act on them. When political considerations, ideological commitments, and ego protection took precedence over technical accuracy, the entire process became compromised. We could identify problems, but we couldn't force the system to address them. My name is Dieter Vogel, and I was 38 years old when I conducted rigorous testing of a captured American rifle and documented findings that my superiors didn't want to hear. That experience taught me that technical competence and honest analysis aren't enough if the system receiving that analysis is unwilling to accept uncomfortable truths. The M1 Garand was a superior weapon. My testing proved it conclusively, and suppressing that finding didn't change the reality that German soldiers faced in combat. It just ensured that the institution failed to respond appropriately to a documented deficiency, and soldiers paid the price for that failure.